Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mature Themes Consent and Inclusion panel. This panel is going to cover a lot of things, some of which might be of a nature that might make you uncomfortable. If this is the case, we 100% understand if you need to turn it off for a bit. Go take care of yourself first, okay? We're going to try to do everything that we talk about in a respectful, fun way, and hopefully you'll learn some things about how deep you can go with your role-playing and how to make everything better at the table for everybody. Let's do a round of introductions real quick. I'm Kelly. I'm the Dungeon Master and host of Dork Tales. My pronouns are he and him, and I have done some consent workshops in the past as an attendee, and have employed consent practices and general inclusive practices in my tabletop games and LARPs for I think about the past 3 or 4 years. It's really kind of become a regular thing, getting a little more common every year. And I'm looking forward to this panel. It's always fun to talk about this stuff. And so I'll just pass it and we'll go down the list. So Christine.
Hi, I'm Christine. I play a lot of characters on Dork Tales. Yeah. I'm losing train of thought here.
Pronouns?
It's been a long weekend.
Pronouns.
Otherwise, I would say, like, consent and, like, mature topic sort of stuff is just having been in the workforce and having gone to university during this time period and all of that. It is an important topic that is all over university campuses and just in general.
Sounds good. And your pronouns?
Awesome. And what are your pronouns?
She, her.
Christine? Awesome.
All right, so let's keep passing it along to Amy.
Hello, I am Amy, and I am also on a lot of stuff on Dork Tales, so you may recognize this face. My pronouns are she, they, anything's good for me. Generally, you notice that I am a paradoxical ghoul. That's my thing. Yeah. So I am just socially speaking very much in support of inclusion and consent and talking to each other and being clear about boundaries in your personal life and your work life and your social life. And I like to talk about that a lot. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, going down the list. Hello, Robin.
Hello, I'm Robin. I go by she, her. In a few games with Dork Tales, I'm really all about like consent and inclusivity, especially with like my career. I'm very much in a man's world, and I've been treated like that a lot. So that is something that like does affect me because I've had a whole bunch of stuff thrown at me, and I've been discriminated against because I'm a woman. So I'm really all about that, like that stuff where, especially like tabletop role-playing games, that you kind of get into that. So I'm all about that, consent and inclusivity. But yeah,
sounds
that's
good.
Me.
Passing it over to the bunny.
Oh, hi, that's me. I'm a bunny. Hi, I'm Millie. My pronouns are they and them or she and her. I am a professional bunny on the internet at twitch.tv/bunnyhearted. I am also a trans woman with a very, I guess, long history of doing activisty work and in diversity and inclusion work and consent work and trainings and curriculum development and all of that stuff. And I have been playing tabletop role-playing games for a very, very long time. And I am so excited to be here on this panel and at this DorkX convention mini thing all together. This is the one that I've been the most excited about all weekend. So I'm so excited to see all of your lovely faces and meet some new folks here. I am in a couple of games on this channel. I guess right now the big one is the Cyberpunk game, where I am on with a slightly different face that is a little bit less virtual, but still has secret bunny ears. So yeah.
Nice. All right. Passing it on over to... have a lot of windows I'm juggling. Pass it on over to Charlene. To Char.
Hey,
Hi, Char.
That's me.
It's you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Char. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the dungeon master and producer at Tabletop Titties, which is a queer and feminist 5th edition D&D podcast. We stream live on Twitch, so go ahead and give us a follow if you can. Otherwise, I host Drinking and Screaming, which is a queer and feminist horror movie review show that I do with my love, Kelly. And I play Morgan on Vancouver by Night. And I work for WAVA, Women Against Violence Against Women, Rape Crisis Center in Vancouver, where we serve all survivors of sexualized violence, regardless of their diverse gender needs. And yeah, super thrilled to be here. Very excited. Consent
Really
is
happy to
a
have you
huge thing for me. And a lot of my games, I love to incorporate horror. So that's something that is a big passion of mine. But it's only fun to be scared if you agree to be scared. Be in the fear with me. I don't want to scare you if you don't want to be scared.
All right, passing it down to Caitlin.
I'm Caitlin. My pronouns are she, her. And I play a couple characters on Dork Tales. I play Claire from Werewolf, and I play Telfrin from the new Immerse game. As a healthcare provider, consent and inclusivity is really important to my everyday job, so I'm really excited to be here and talk about it with y'all.
All right, now to the first of a double feature of Kel. Kel. And then we'll pass to Kelly.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kel. You may know me from up the road.
Which needs to be your YouTube channel.
It will be my YouTube channel, Kel from up the road. My pronouns are she, her. And I am in a couple of games here on Dork Tales. I am Pippi Riverstone in Secret of Hexador House. I am also Rain White in Cyberpunk Spitfire. And my education background is actually criminology. I am a criminologist by educations. And my past life was working in a sober living rehab for women exiting sex work and dealing with drug and alcohol addiction. So consent, mature themes, all of the inclusivity is very much my wheelhouse and my jam. So I'm just happy to be here and give whatever, insight I have, experiences that I have. And Char, Weva, I have a special place in my heart for Weva. Great work. Followed Weva for a long time. I'm originally from the mainland, so I'm very familiar with Weva and recommended some of my clients for your services. So, thank you for being there. You guys just do amazing work. Amazing work.
And finally, last but not least, the other Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I run Dork Tales. Oh, no, wait.
Oh, crap! I'm free!
Oh, no.
Run!
I'm Kelly. My pronouns are they, them. I'm from a lot of the things that Char said, mostly Drinking Screaming, the queer and feminist podcast about horror movies and cocktails. I'm also used to play Insomnia on Vancouver by Night, but now I play August Ostagar. And I haven't actually gotten to play them yet. I just introduced them. And I run a YouTube channel called Super Hopped Up and a bunch of other things. I run tech for Tabletop Titties. I don't have a full-time job, so it's not as stressful as it actually seems. So, and yeah, most of the projects that I work in, we always have consent. Always talk about how we'll deal with mature themes. We aren't mature ourselves, but the themes that are mature should be handled maturely. And yeah, so this is a big thing that I try to include in literally every project that I have ever worked on. Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we start off with this? So the chat has already put in that they are excited to hear about ways to make inclusivity seamless as they want to use it in their workplace and make everybody be as comfortable as they can. So does anybody have any ways, just off the bat, that they can try to include inclusivity both in their lives and in games? And maybe if that ties into consent, because they really work together a lot of the time.
Yeah. Honestly, I was in my grad work at SFU. I was a teaching assistant, and one of my big things for my tutorials was specifically creating community in the classroom. And I even developed it into a workshop for TATM Day at SFU. And the big thing, especially when you're working with students, is understanding what kind of responsibilities that you have to them. It's not just about, marking their work and making sure that they, you get your assignments in and everybody is on the same page with understanding. There's things that are going to come up that you just do not expect, especially when you're dealing with a younger population. Mine were undergrads, so I had all kinds of disclosures. People will tell you their secrets because you're in that position. I mean, and especially when it's, regarding classwork and and it impacts their future, there's things that come up. There's serious family things that come up. There's serious life things that come up, and you got to know how to deal with it, where you can refer people to, and just how you can just providing that environment where they feel comfortable enough to tell somebody, because you might be the only person that they've ever told. And that's a big responsibility. It's a big thing to deal with. So the first thing I do in a classroom is, get everybody on board, just say that it's a safe space and that maybe you're learning it the same with them and just doing your best. So find out what's available.
Fair. Christine, you have your hand up.
One of the, even if you're maybe not sure about big things you can do, little things mean a lot. For instance, so I work at a university, and at one of the departments I worked in, one of our grad students came to us and said, "Hey, my name is not feminine name anymore. It is masculine name. I am transitioning," sort of thing. And it was like, sweet. Go into my email, change it so that it reflects the new name with brackets previous name, because unfortunately it was still a legal name and we need that in certain paperwork. But going and changing their mailbox to have the new name.
Yep. Without them asking, I believe you did that as well.
Yeah, I just went, it's like, oh, you sent out a really nice email to the staff and faculty of your department saying, hey, just letting you know, this is happening. I'll understand if you forget, but this is what I would like. So I was like, all right, type, print label, rip off, put on. They came in the next day practically crying. So little things like that mean a lot to people. So really listening and paying attention to what people tell you. And if you might not understand it, but don't dismiss it.
Sure.
Yeah, jumping off of what Christine is saying here, of what I always do with all of if I'm running a game or if I'm running a meeting in the workplace, I start with everybody introducing themselves, just like we did here, and saying their pronouns, regardless of if you're someone that uses gender diverse pronouns or not. I am a cisgendered woman. I use she, her, but just the fact of normalizing saying your pronouns all the time helps people who might not use the pronoun that seems to fit them. And just always incorporating that practice and making it a part of your regular life every day is something that will help so much. And like in terms of like misgendering people, if you ever come across that situation, it's great to be an ally and just jump in with a correction. And although it might feel awkward, doing it literally every time will help kick that new habit into gear for whoever happens to be doing it accidentally, hopefully.
Nice. Millie.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the normalization, the normalization part is one of the most important, because trans people, we will know if you are only asking us what our pronouns are. If you are not familiar with like how to ask those kind of questions and that sort of thing, it has to be something that feels natural and normal to you, which means you need to make this a natural and normal thing. And a really, really easy thing to do, like what Christine was just talking about when it comes to emails, in a work environment, like you can just put your pronouns in your email signature. You don't have to be a queer or trans person to do that. It's not a big thing to do. It's so easy. It's like 10 characters. You just stick it there at the bottom. Almost no one will ever see it, but we will. We will see it, and we will be like, all right, this person's maybe pretty cool. Carry on. You get like a secret +1 for that. It gives you a +1 in your like sneak attack affection bonus. I don't know. Stats.
Yeah. Okay.
Twitter bio, like everything.
Yeah.
Who was first, Kel or Robin?
I wasn't looking.
I
I wasn't looking either.
So what? We'll start with Robin, then pass back to Kel.
Sure. I was kind of going off of like what everyone else has said before, is that it's just to make it normal, just start making it normal. Even if you're the first one to do it, just start by like either in the email or if someone is correcting. Like I know personally, with for example, for Rhyme at the beginning, I was having a bit of a problem with Lysithian's pronouns. Because the wig, and it looks female, and Hayden presents more female for the features of them. So I was having a hard time, and like I felt bad, but I just kept doing it and saying it and being like they, and now I don't mess up on stream. So it's making that conscious effort to do it. And I think that's like a thing that can really help if you're new to this, or if you have someone that is new to this and you want to correct it, just keep going and keep practicing, and it will mean a lot to people, because being addressed by the right pronouns is, that's what helps.
Kel.
Yeah, I was just back to what Millie was saying about putting it in your emails. The company I work for just recently, earlier this year, or was it last? No, it was last year. It came out and said, you know what, with all this, the issues about gender pronouns and whatnot, they said, you know what, put them in your email. Put them, like she said, put them in your email signature. So now everybody's doing it, and it's great. And it's just like, yes, I have a progressive company that it's like, yeah, do this. We want to be inclusive. So there's good places out there doing it. So.
All right. So Caitlin,
and if they're not, start it.
It's true. So Caitlin and then Kelly.
Yeah, on that topic, if you're in a workplace that maybe doesn't do as much emailing around like that, or if you just or if you're in some place where you work with the public, I'm finding a lot of people are actually wearing little button pins as well. I actually really want to get one for work because I saw one of my coworkers wearing it, and I was like, yes, I love this. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
Kelly.
little things like that.
I've definitely also been in situations where like having your pronouns, or like I don't know, representing yourself in any way that's like natural to yourself definitely isn't like accepted in a lot of shitty places. And I think if you ever find yourself in that situation, like being almost like being the queer point of contact basically has definitely helped. I've been in a few workplaces that aren't exactly chill, and I just sort of like on the sly message people that I know are having problems with it and be like, listen, I know this is a shitty place and we're all just trying to make money and live, but like there are people here who accept you for you, and by being vocal about that, like hopefully you don't feel alone and terrified in this awful place.
And I'm gonna speak on behalf of everybody who's not used to using pronouns or gender neutral pronouns. If you mess it up, it's okay. Just do better next time. And if you you don't have to make a huge deal if you mess someone's pronoun up, so long as it doesn't have to be a big deal. Just apologize and say sorry. I'll try harder, and then actually try harder. That's it. Just keep trying and be genuine, and it doesn't have to be a huge thing. You don't, especially if you're anxious about it. Just keep trying. You'll get it, and I think they will appreciate the effort. Millie.
It's true.
Yay!
So I mean, I think building on, I'm not sure which side you are on me, Kelly, right? Instead of
we are.
Kelly
So
DM.
they are diagonally to the beneath
they're
your
over
chair.
there. Okay, excellent.
And I am diagonally above.
Hang
So
on.
we're basically
It's
you
hard
are.
it's hard to figure out the direction.
You are the centerpiece in our tic-tac-toe board.
Connected. Well, hey, I can just point in every cool direction. This is exciting. Like connected to what they were saying. I think it's important to recognize whether or not the space that you're in is safe for it. And when it comes to normalization, you have to make sure that it's not only trans people that are expected to put their pronouns in their email. That it's not only the trans people who are expected to introduce themselves that way. You have to make this a natural part of your work environment, your organization's environment, any of that stuff. It has to feel normal and natural. So even if there is not a single trans person in that organization, because we're secretly there, you may not know, we're secretly there. Some of us are very stealthy. That they will feel welcome if they walk in the door, not like you're scrambling to put all of your dirty cis stereotype things under a rug and trying to make them feel welcome at the last minute. And connected to what Robin was saying, who is in a direction here, when it comes to practicing stuff, I mean, we're all taught to put people into one box or another box in our like subtler colonial way of doing sex, gender, and sexuality. You look at a person, the first thing that you do is go, that is a guy, or that is a girl. That is the very first decision that we are making about a person that we meet based on a set of social cues. And trying to unlearn that one is the best practice that you can do. So if you try to reset that and you try to focus on meeting meeting a person and thinking, this is a person. I just met them. They have nice hair. They are wearing, I don't know, cool jeans. And you work on that for yourself. And I'm someone who's now using they and them pronouns who wasn't when I came out. And who really struggled with this for years. And I was meeting other queer and trans people who use they and them. And I was like, cripes, how do I do this? I don't know. I worked to try to retrain myself, to default to a neutral way of seeing people. And I'm certainly not perfect at it. We're all stuck in this like weird binary nonsense society. But that is such a powerful way to start. And it can really change how you think about the world too once you get there. And it makes it seem so natural. So you're not shoving all of your accidental stereotypes that you learned under the rug the moment a trans person walks in.
Nice. Okay, so I saw some people raise their hands there. I'm gonna change the topic in a second to something that I think is really relevant to this. But Christine and Amy, did you want to add something real quick?
Yeah, just a little thing was that, like where I work with a lot of international students. International names are very, very different from Canadian names in a lot of circumstances. You can't necessarily tell anything based on a name. And that is something that older coworkers would sometimes go, hey, can you tell, is this a female or a male name sort of thing? I'm like, just use they.
Just use it's like it's there already.
They specify otherwise. Like, they works fine. Use their name. Don't address them as she, her. Or also, I find it very interesting how many people contact me and I get called doctor a lot. I'm not. I don't have a PhD.
Just take it. It's fine.
I also get called Mr. a lot because they can't seem to conceive of the idea that a female works in a department that handles the sort of stuff that my department handles.
Love that.
Yay.
Love it.
And then,
which is really funny when they put my first name next to that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you're French. They don't know. Christiane.
Yeah.
Amy, bring us home on this one.
Well, I want to talk just really quickly about the fact that the singular they has been in use for like well over 100 years, and it's a part of our language. And anyone who argues otherword is wrong. And
Peterson. Sorry, I had bullshit stuck in my throat.
And use of word, like speech is, as a linguist, BT does. Speech is a habit. It is a way of, like, when you're talking, you are using habits, and part of habit is the way you're thinking and you're talking are interconnected, like integral, like fundamentally. So when you're talking, you're reinforcing how you think about things, and when you're thinking about things and planning your speech, you're changing how you believe what you believe and how you think about the world and view the world. So even if there's no one in front of you and you're just practicing in your house, trying, like, getting used to using different pronouns or different ways of talking or neo-pronouns that you're not familiar with, you're changing how you're thinking. And anyone who's arguing against it, that this isn't something that they can do,
is arguing they can't think.
Well, and it's fun because they're
all the time.
Right.
We're incorporating them into our language, so you can do it. You can. Don't say you can't. You're just convincing yourself. You're just permitting yourself to be not inclusive.
So I guess one of the questions that comes up in terms of gaming, so we started off with this and we've spent a good time on just like including other pronouns, but so speaking from the devil's advocate point of view and then immediately counteracting it, why the hell should we care about this aside from making a few people more comfortable? And why should we think about things like inclusivity and, for example, having people play different genders in games and things like that? And we have a case study right in our chat right now. One of our players actually, in our Rime of the Frostmaiden stream, discovered their gender identity through role-playing. And I think a lot of people actually do. Right? I believe, I'm not going to name names.
I definitely used it.
One of my friends, who shall remain nameless, had the quote, if I can play a space octopus, I can play a girl. I think was the beginning of something beautiful. I'm not going to say who that was.
Awesome.
But it was a paraphrase version. But so, yeah, I think that's a topic that would be really worthwhile talking about. Like, what are the benefits of doing this, aside from, of course, just the opening the door for inclusivity? what are some of the benefits of consent? Because a lot of people, especially gamers who, you know, like Gen X gamers and older, didn't, and even a lot of millennials, didn't grow up in that kind of culture where it was acceptable and have some pushback to it. Why should I bother? Kelly.
Funny story. So I'm more like fluid than like static. And my first D&D character was actually a changeling, which, you know, was very telling at the time. I was exceedingly lucky that in the early 2000s, I got into a group of like a bunch of cishet white guys that were also extremely chill with me, like experimenting with gender identity and stuff at such a young age. So I played a changeling that like would occasionally change genders, and like I would come to the table with like a different feeling about who my character was, and I am ever grateful that I did not play with a bunch of chuds that hated me doing that. And then once WoW came out and ruined my life in terms of school progress and being successful, I mostly played female characters, which of course you always get the like, oh, you just want to look at their ass while you're running around comment. And I'm like, I mean, I would want to look at my ass if I was hot. Yes. But also it let me... Like,
ass is ass.
Yeah, ass is ass, guys.
Also, anybody who plays anything besides FemShep in Mass Effect is wrong. We can agree on that.
I mean, that's good. Yeah. But I mean, like everyone's ass in WoW looks great. Don't kid yourself. But it let me play around with being a different gender without having to present myself. So like I would join guilds and I would play this other role, and a lot of like at the time I thought I was being weird, but then growing up I realized that it let me explore my own gender identity under the guise of sexy night elf. But yeah, I think it's extremely important to have those spaces, and I'm exceedingly privileged to have had access to all of those things growing up.
Okay. Anybody else want to add on that? Because I've got another couple questions because the chat's been
Robin's
piling
got
up.
her hand up.
Oh, she does. Sorry, you're blending into the background for me. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm matching the books. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, you were like your skin is actually the color of the books right there on my screen.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
I need a better monitor.
So yeah, going along like the why should we care? It allows people to maybe again find and express part of themselves. For me, it's not necessarily gender, but my sexuality. I kind of discovered that I was into guys and girls during university, and it was kind of like a slow process of me coming out and being more open to that. But actually through roleplay, it's kind of again meeting other queer people and just the inclusivity. It's allowing me to be myself, and I really enjoy being able to share that kind of part with me, because I grew up in a very small podunky town, so there's not many queer people around. Like, it was the theater kids, and that's where it kind of started the wheels turning. And then I went to university in Ontario, and I was like, oh, just kidding, this is who I am. People accept you for that. And then with like this is just, and like the internet, Twitch land has really kind of helped me become who I am. And it's nice to be able to share that and not feel like I'm gonna get judged for it or discriminated against and kind of put down, because it's like, that's who I am. I like both asses. I like both types of asses.
All the asses.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for trusting us with that. Thank you. That means a lot.
Millie, do you want to talk about asses too?
I mean, now I have another thing I want to talk about other than butts, but I'm really struggling right now because, like, have you considered butts? They're great.
They're pretty good.
All butts are beautiful. ABAB. So anyways, I think something that we've sort of been like circling around a little bit is that people use tabletop games and role-playing in general to explore parts of themselves. Like you always bring a little piece of you into a character that you're playing, and people often, maybe not even consciously, make characters that are a piece of them that they want to play around with, that they want to explore. And I think that's a really, really good why for making your space inclusive, because you probably want to give your friends space to like explore different parts of themselves authentically. And making a D&D setting where, you know, there are queer and trans people can make them have that opportunity where it's not like, well, no, dwarves have this kind of gender, you cannot play a genderqueer dwarf. Haha. If you're like, yeah, sure, genderqueer dwarves, that sounds great, and you give them the space to explore that a little bit, you can really help make an environment for your friends to explore themselves too.
That's really true. I had something to add on that, and now it fell out of my head because I was thinking about genderqueer dwarves.
I have a little thing to add on to that.
Please, find me some time.
Like, on that thing, the whole point of role-playing games is getting a chance to, like, play something that's not you. Or maybe it's part of you. Or an aspect of you. Or something you want to work on of you. Or anything like that. Like, I mean, my first characters were all, like, really kick-ass. Right? It felt good to be the one who went around kicking in doors. Like, that's just fun. Yeah. And it's exploring part of you that maybe you don't do. You don't have a setup in your yard of a door that you can just kick open every day.
Although now that you say it, we can do that. We have a yard.
That would be fun. But, like, my second LARP I played a really social character, being a very shy person. I had to be the one going and doing shit and talking to people without, like, being led to it. I had to be the leader in that because I was supposed to be playing that thing. It was not easy.
So I was going to say real quick that, by the way, even if you are not queer at all, or not exploring anything, or at least you don't, or maybe if you don't think you're exploring anything, because that happens more often than you think.
I got ambushed.
Don't be afraid to give it a try if you want to try something. Like, if you, someone in the chat posted a great question that we're gonna hop on in a sec. But like, particularly if you are running games, it's a great way just to treat everyone like a different type of person, rather than a different type of, like, a category of person, really, right? Like, everybody's just a different flavor of person. And if you want to play someone who is different than you, that's kind of the point. Like, don't be afraid. Like, if you want to see what it's like to play like a gay character, for example, I think a lot of guys get hung up on the idea of that. Or people wanting to play bisexuality can be something that feels a little awkward at the table. Give it a try. Talk it over with people, and, you know, make sure if everybody's comfortable with you stepping outside the box. I would just recommend just don't do anything like a stereotype. Like, literally, the for those of you who don't have any gay friends, the difference between gay friends and non-gay friends is usually that they just like other people, like, you know, like them.
Other butts.
Like,
butts.
they like
Yeah.
more. They like a specific kind of butt. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
There is no difference between that and like, do you have friends that are vegetarians? It's like they like a different type of food. They like a different type of butt. It's the same. It's a preference. It's a preference.
Found the nexus topic.
Vegetarians are.
Yeah, anyways, we won't
Anyway, that's a nexus topic. Okay, so the question as new DM: I'm also part of the LGBTQ plus community, and I'm also writing an inclusive NPCs, different gender identities, non-genders, etc., into the campaign. How can I, as a cis bisexual woman, respectively, RP said NPCs? I'm going to add one thing onto that. How do you describe them as well? Because I feel that there is a very different way. For me on my channel, I try to make sure that in my fantasy world, when I'm running that, and in any modern world, there is a lot of inclusivity. Like, a lot of people are bisexual, a lot of people are gay, a lot of people are non-binary and insist on they, them. But I always feel like I'm hitting a slight stumbling block whenever I try to do any trans inclusion, because I want it to be, and I hope this doesn't come off wrong, because this is my cis anxiety freeze up right here. I want it to be obvious enough to viewers that there is representation. That I'm like, hey, this is... But then at the same point, I don't want to point fingers and say, I want to say, this is a trans person, not this is a trans person. And it's such a thin line that I stumble over myself. So if anybody has any ideas about that, I don't want to divide categories between trans and cis, but I also want trans people who watch the show to feel represented. Sorry if that's a quagmire, but I'm just going to back up and let you guys take it. Or let you all take it.
Millie's ready.
Can I
We'll,
ask
like,
you
Oh, sorry, Millie. Yes. Yes.
No, not even jumping on that one. So I guess just trying to nail down sort of the specifics on it. Do you feel like you're trying to figure out how to describe a person that is trans, and you're worried about describing a trans person?
I'm worried.
Sense?
Sort of.
Or
Yes. I'm
using,
worried about.
like,
I'm
less
worried
of
about mentioning
one
traits.
Of the many features.
I'm worried about mentioning traits or mentioning something that might be a sensitive issue or might be something that could be triggering for someone. That could be, and I don't want to, because there are so many things that, so many sensitive issues, and I may I mention a couple of minor things. For example, if I was describing a trans man as being like somewhat shorter. Is at what point does it be?
I think
Sorry.
really what it is like you're trying to, like, you have a woman shows up in the scene and you're like,
Yes.
this is so and so, they're involved in the quest, so whatever, but the character that you've designed is trans, but you don't want to like stop and look at the camera and be like, they're trans, by the way,
no.
or like dead name them or anything like that. Which it's because then you run into like the J.K. Rowling thing where it's like, no, they were gay the whole time. I don't know what you're talking about. I never said it. I never included any hint towards it, but they were. They were gay the whole time. Don't worry about it.
Like I said,
and
yeah.
and I personally don't know, because like for a non-binary character, they show up and say hey, they, them, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
But I have no advice. But
The only time I've had success with this is when a scene, someone was talking. It was talking with Tia, Amy's character, actually, and they just made a couple of references to, like, they started to say their name wrong, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm still getting used to addressing myself like this." And it was a little subtle thing, but I know that any trans person watching probably was like immediately, because like you're hyper aware. When you don't see that, I think. I don't know. But Millie, if you have any ideas, if anybody has any ideas, how do you do that without othering, I guess?
I'm just thinking back to your part about, talking about a trans man and that they might be shorter. Do you have to say that they're shorter? Just say their height.
This is true. This is
Well,
true.
they also might
their
not
height.
be shorter.
Yeah, they're about so
This
tall,
is definitely
so tall, and then people, just who cares?
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
In terms of like when is the right time to announce someone's gender as an NPC or whatever, I think the story you were describing, Kelly, is the way to go. Kelly, Dork Tales Kelly.
Oh, okay, good. That actually took me an extra 3 seconds to figure out even after you said that. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, Kelly.
Of taking the time in the story that when it would come up naturally, that is the perfect time. Like, I am demisexual and I don't reveal that part of myself with a lot of people, but I do when I feel like I'm in a safe space and that it comes up in the conversation, but I don't introduce myself, hey, I'm Char and I'm demisexual. Unless maybe for a panel like this.
yeah,
By the way.
I think using it as a narrative point definitely makes sense, where it's like they're comfortable enough with the PC, so
Yeah.
they reveal that about themselves.
And then it just is a way to bring the story forward and make it more intricate and interesting. And I think that's a big part of the idea you asked earlier, like, why do we want to be inclusive? Why do we want to diversify our games? And that's because if you're sitting at a table where everybody's looking like you all have the same sort of background, your stories are going to be vanilla. Having the different people at the table is what makes a story so invigorating and surprising, because everybody comes from different mindsets due to their diversity.
All right. Millie, what's up?
Char, you just nailed what I was about to say at the end there. That's, yes, absolutely on board with you. I saw a couple of people in chat asking about CIS. I like the question what CIS stands for, which is the Confederacy of Interplanetary Systems. They're the bad guys. Can I do like a 30-second breakdown of cisgender and transgender, just with like a really easy
nobody's
version
gonna stop
for
you
it,
in this panel.
just in case anyone is confused. Well, you can't stop me because I'll hit you with a mug. So, I mean, I guess... The easiest description is that a transgender person is someone who does not identify, and I'm not a fan of the language identify, but someone who does not match or does not identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. When the doctor showed up in the hospital and you popped out there and the doctor was like, it's a boy. And I'm like, yeah, that doctor was full of shit. That makes me a trans person. Whether or not I'm like non-binary, genderqueer, et cetera, et cetera. And Two-Spirit, I think of as a separate category for many, many reasons that are maybe beyond the scope of this 30-second intro. But the language for that is transgender. Cisgender means that doctor was freaking on point that day. 10 out of 10. Good job, Dr. Bob. And the roots of these terms, and these were easy to me coming from like a sciencey background because I was already familiar with cis and trans, meaning, trans is across from or in a different place and cis is on the same side of. And that's all that it really means. And we use trans all the time in English now. Like these are old Latin words. Like we transport objects, we transfer things, we
is that a cistern?
Transmit things. That's moving stuff from place to place. That's all the trans means. And cis is the opposite end of that. We don't really have much use for that word in English, but like, hang on. I am cis-porting this floating space mug really hard right now by not touching it at all and leaving it where it started.
Don't strain yourself.
That's the only difference. So if anyone's like confused by those words, I think that's a pretty easy explanation.
And cis is not a slur. So if anybody ever says that, they're an idiot.
Unless you're a part of like the Confederacy of Interplanetary Systems, in which case, like, what are you doing? Come on, you could do way cooler stuff with those robots.
I'm gonna pull something so brave yet controversial moment. If you think that cis is a slur, you think that trans is a slur. So go away.
We don't need you here if that's how you think.
Please transport yourself elsewhere, because
or cis
in your lane.
Whichever. I don't know.
Cisport yourself here while I transport myself away. Okay, so
I'm linearly sweet too.
How do you? So I think that the breakdown of that is that I should just get out of the categories in my head and just describe people as people and not worry about raising skirts and things like that, basically, which is true. It takes a while. Like I'm even deprogramming myself, guys. It takes a while. So I even use guys all the time. It's the West Coast. It's kind of say dudes. I don't know. Still.
Potentially, if you want to like have that representation be a bit more obvious in the stream, you have to pick a long-term NPC so that the hints can come out. Because a short-term throwaway NPC, well, it's kind of worthless at that point, right?
Yeah,
it's a throwaway.
I worry about the idea of hints because then it becomes like a mystery. Like, oh, today we uncover her gender or their gender, right? But
you don't ever have to do that. It's just natural parts of their background, or when they get comfortable with the characters, maybe there's a scene where you run into their parents or something, and like the PCs can be really supportive or something, right? Like it's just more they're a person, and there's maybe little hints that, oh, hey, maybe they have a bit more interesting background than we knew.
Amy Kell.
Okay, so sort of just to touch on the use of collective terms of like guys and dudes.
Yeah, please.
And going in, and kind of touching on that consent thing. If someone has told you don't use this referring to me, accept that. Listen, even though it's something that we're very used to, and a lot of us do accept it. Not everyone will, and you have to listen. You have to listen to that and respect it. You have to respect it. If you respect your friends.
And I use guys instinctively because all the Dork Tales crew has said that they're fine with that type of dialect, but I forgot to check with you too. So I'm really sorry about that. I probably should have. Sorry.
Yeah, so I just sort of thought that maybe this is a good sort of shift into sort of that consent and communication part, maybe.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Kel, did you want to hammer this
well, back to the idea about discussing an NPC, whether they're trans. I think one of my favorite parts of our cyberpunk game is our NPC noise, because they are just whatever they want to be, and I love that we have a character who is they, who is, and we just have that person there. And they're starting to become kind of one of my favorite characters. even though they're an NPC.
And they do not speak. That is one of their
They
weird
don't speak-
things.
yeah, I love it.
They're
Yeah.
nonverbal because we had been talking a lot about nonverbal role-playing because Millie has some friends who do nonverbal role-play. And I was like, oh, well, someone who is expressive but without words in the future where you can just send text messages with your brain, right? Like, why bother? Really?
Yeah, and I think that the character Noise is just an expressive person to begin with and expresses themselves in other ways. And also I like the dichotomy of a bartender who doesn't say anything, because people are probably just pouring out their problems to them and they're just like, or whatever they do, and it's just I like having them. And I kind of wish that they were a real person, because I would like to know this person.
The best thing is, out there is someone like that. Probably a lot of people like that.
I know, and I hope we find them.
Millie.
Hope they find us.
Just poking at the conversation about guys in chat as well. I mean, I know lots of people are cool with it. Lots of people are not cool with it. I definitely encourage folks to something like that as a more neutral option, and consent is very important. But it's also sometimes very interesting to think about which words get to be neutral, because you couldn't say, hey, girls, to a group that included guys without it feeling strange.
You could say bitches, but that has a whole extra bunch of baggage.
Yeah, that requires a lot of specific consent as well.
Yep. Sorry, I just thought about that one.
I do want to call all of my friends gals now. Now that you've mentioned
it's fun to
You
do.
can call
but
me
they
a
get
gal.
mad at you
I'm
for
down with
it.
I
that.
want to call everyone gal now. Listen,
girlfriend,
gal.
yeah. Okay, so we've talked a lot about this, and we were talking about moving into consent. So we have had 2 questions in the chat that have caught my eye, and they are, oh, that really sucks. Someone talking about getting misgendered as sir in class as a teacher. That's rough.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I feel that. So handling trauma and hard lines in role playing is really, really good. Does anybody want to kick that off? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, if you're DMing a story that might involve some trauma, you might feel like you don't want to spoil the story for your players, or that they need to actually you want them to feel it as best as they can to make the experience better. But letting your player know beforehand is not going to ruin that, and it's not going to spoil that. And I just wanted to start the conversation with that idea, tying in consent to including trauma in your games is critical. And you can start that conversation before in your session 0. We posted it in the chat earlier. There's a really handy consent checklist that you can go through with your players. And what I love about those types of resources is that you don't even need to have a dialogue. Some people may find even talking about their triggers very triggering in and of itself, but having a little form that you can say I really don't need any paralysis in this game included whatsoever is a super helpful tool. And yeah, so if you do want to introduce trauma, make sure it's not something that's a no on your consent list, and also let your players know beforehand, and make sure that everyone's okay with it. Otherwise, go a different way.
Kelly.
I think similar in the way that we mentioned how if you fuck up, don't make a big deal of it. If you do accidentally slip someone's trigger into a scene and they hardline it, don't get mad about it, or don't freak out too much about it. Just literally rewind time and say that didn't happen, here's what actually happened. And I think building that safety with your players, and knowing that they don't have to feel awkward bringing it up, because nobody wants to sit through a triggering scene that they don't feel comfortable stopping because they don't want to piss anybody off. But if you build up that that relationship and that trust with everybody, to just be hey, that thing that was just about to happen, or that thing that just started to happen, I'm not okay with it and it's triggering. And then the GM should be okay, and even if they need to take a second to rethink the scene, I think that level of trust and that level of you know what, nothing's set in stone in an RPG. It's all in our heads. Everything's imaginary. There are dwarves and dragons and stuff. And listen, time travel, chronomancy exists. Maybe it's a thing. I don't know. Yeah. But
a wizard did it.
A wizard did it. But yeah, I think having that level of the moment you lose trust in your GM to do something like that, you no longer feel comfortable at the table.
Sounds good. Caitlin.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also really important to note that something that may not have been a trigger before may all of a sudden become a trigger, and these things always have to be talked about constantly over and over and over again. And as well, maybe if you're doing it face to face, or even on Zoom, I guess you'd always be. Anyway, having a non-verbal signal that you're getting uncomfy with the situation is really important as well. Because the person might not want to be speaking up in front of everybody, but yeah, something has to stop with that.
Yes, we used to have foam, like big foam dice that we would chuck at each other if things got rough.
There you go. There you go. That's a good one.
Entirely nonverbal.
I like it.
Millie, I saw you raise your hand during that. Are you going to talk about carding as well? Because that's what I was going to do.
Carding. You should do that. I just wanted to say, because I think that's a really good approach. Oh god, my train of thought has left the station and gone for a small adventure.
ADD friends.
I have to go back for a second. ADD friends. Caitlin, you were talking about.
We were talking about consent. We were talking about throwing dice at people. We were talking about
triggers that they might not have known were a thing before.
Oh, right.
Surprise
I guess,
trigger.
I forget one thing, but I remember a small thing, which is that you should never need to ask for an explanation. If someone redlines you and says, no, we're not continuing this way with the scene, you don't need to know why. That's not on you to know, and that's not like a personal attack. If someone doesn't want to tell you why they're not okay with like the easy example is someone who's worked in support work is like, you know, the smell of eggs in the morning. If someone's like, nope, not into that, can we have a different kind of breakfast? You don't need to know that the reason is that's what their abuser baked in the morning after abusing them. You don't need to know that. You just need to know, okay, cool, they made pancakes, carry on.
Right. And there's some really easy ways to incorporate these type of lines into your game. The most common of them are black carding and or black sheeting or anything like that, or the red, yellow, green system. Black carding is really easy. You have a piece of something black on the table, usually just to represent that you're entering a blackout. It can be any color, but you have it either every player has one and they just go hold it up when they are feeling uncomfortable, and then the scene fades to black, and then you can rewind it after everybody has a moment. You can just skip ahead. You can call the game there. You can talk. It's a game, guys, or people. Sorry, reflexive there. It's a game, friends. I'm gonna say you're all my friends, though. It's gals. We'll go gals. I'll go gals from now on. It's a game, gals. We should be doing it for fun, so don't stress out about accommodating someone else using that, and don't be afraid to use it. My God, please use it. Red, yellow, green card system is really good if you're getting into a situation that has like romantic or sexual overtones. Particularly good in LARPs when you are flirting with someone. I've had some incredibly hot and heavy flirting in LARPs with someone I was not interested in at all, but we had that type of like, this is even before we had carding, but we had that type of understanding of like, obviously no, but like we're in character. If we had carding, it would have been even more comfortable, because then you just kind of lean in and you're like, yeah, so how about we go back to my place? And like if you're role-playing this in character, you can easily just be like, this is a LARP technique that uses usually German words, because it's less immersion breaking to say a word that isn't in English than it is to say a word in English. But the quick way would be green card, which means, hey, let's proceed with this scene as normal. I'm having fun. We can go talk about what our characters do, and it's great. Yellow card, which is basically the yield, is, hey, I'm not enjoying this scene, but I don't really like where we're headed. Can we continue in a different direction? And then red means stop. Period. No question. If someone says stop, you stop, because they have opted out of the scene and they are not there anymore. You can't continue. It's fine. Fade to black. Call it a day. There's still, and fading to black is really, really easy to do. They do it in every James Bond movie. Pan to the fireplace. If you don't want to, you don't have to role play sex in a game, guys. Like, you don't. You can.
You have to roleplay violence, according to James
totally
Bond.
Can.
You totally can. You totally can roleplay the violence as well. I would not encourage it, but you could. Don't. Anyway, so who was up first? Was it just Kelly?
I think so.
All right, Gal, go.
I've got I heard of another layer to that. I'm going to butcher it. I think it's called Lines and Veils. I don't know if anyone else has experience with that.
What's that from? I read that recently.
I guest on some another podcast that uses that. But I'm trying to remember. So now I'm like trying to remember the name of the podcast and the concept. Anyways, the concept.
Sorry.
I think lines are like hard lines. We don't include this stuff, and it's more for like setting up the campaign as a whole. And it's like our world will not have these things, or nobody will ever talk about this stuff, and it won't come up. And then I think veils are like things that we know exist in the world, but we don't really want to explore them. And it's sort of like if you don't mind the idea of a concept existing in the world and kind of just being a known thing of everybody in the universe, but you yourself don't want to do a scene with it, then you would like veil it. And then you can use that in addition to like the red cards and stuff as well to sort of like build out what the concept or the campaign will be, and then hard to find scenes later on.
Mm-hmm. We had a question in the chat that says, follow-up question to continue the conversation. What is everyone's protocol for post-support after finding a surprise trigger? Happened in a game I ran a while ago. And this really speaks to me. We had, for me personally, in our vampire game, I got triggered in a scene, and I'm very much the show must go on type of personality. So I didn't use the systems that we do have available to us. But afterwards, I let our players know how I was feeling and how that scene was a trigger for me. And there's really great ways to help people in terms of this. And I think it's mainly allowing the triggered person to let you know what they need, because maybe they don't even want to talk about it and they just want to move on. You never really can assume what someone is thinking, especially when they are in a heightened emotional state. But just being there and supportive for that person. And what Millie said earlier about like needing to know why someone is triggered is like the absolute worst thing you could do. Do not do that.
Yeah, defend your emotions for me, please, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Christine.
Well, I think Millie had her
Did you have
hand
your
up, and then Kel was after that.
Oh, sorry, Kel, you're really, really pale against that background. I'm sorry, Kel.
I totally did not.
Kel,
okay.
Christine, then.
I think I was drinking tea.
Oh, okay.
It's invisible for you. I'm sorry. It's stealth tea.
No problem. I think when somebody is feeling triggered and you don't necessarily know how, we're not going to always know how to deal with it. Just asking that person, what can I do to support you in this moment? How can we best support you now? And they'll tell you what they need. Maybe they need time. Maybe they need to take a break. Who knows? But just asking the question, that's what I try to keep in mind whenever somebody's, even if they're just having a rough day, is there something that I can do to support you? What do you need from us to be able to feel better in this moment, or what do you need? So that's a little thing that I do.
All right, back to Christine.
So I think also is just thinking about this even in terms of something upsetting in game, not necessarily a trigger. Just it got overly emotional or something. So post support, partially, I think something that's good is having some time where you're talking out of game at the end of it, and it really depends on the style of game. If you're streaming it, it can be really important to not talk to the person in that moment. Yes. Because you don't know how thin their wire is holding themselves back from ugly crying. And nobody wants to do that in public.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to have that breakdown in public.
Christine is a famously easy crier, too. Like, even when you're not sad. I cry
really easy. Like, really easy. I get angry, I start crying. And I can't talk. It's really frustrating. Same here. So when we had the time in Rhyme where all of our characters had a big conflict point, I was very in Callie and I was very close to crying, and then people are talking to me before we're off stream, and that's why I was just kind of brushing you all off and being like, fuck off, don't talk to me, stop it, because I was so close to crying, and I was like,
and you don't want to cry
there is
in front of everybody.
50 people watching us right now. I am not doing this for their entertainment right now.
And then, but we had a long post conversation though, right?
Yeah. And at that point, I don't care. It's just my friends. I can cry in front of them. That's okay. If I get a little emotional, I'll warn them. Look, I'm not really upset, but I can't control these tear duct
eyeballs,
things.
yeah.
Also, I get really red when I get emotional at all in any way, shape, or form. It's frustrating. But I think so having that line of thinking, okay, what are we doing right now? Is this a safe time to maybe upset them further by letting them talk about it? And then maybe they don't want to stop the game. So definitely doing it as post, maybe. Or if they have to drive home, like kind of let them lead on it. But I think having some wind down time where you can remember that you're friends and not this person just did this to me sort of thing, right? Because we had that with Kelly ran LARPs where we were running around in character pretending to be our characters. And like, for me, at least one of the characters and mine got in kind of a screaming in each other's face. Like we were that close to each other pretty much. And like there was a moment of even getting close enough that we did break the rules on touching. Because it was like you were close enough, I shoved back.
You shouldn't have, but you did.
We shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But I mean, when somebody gets that close to me anyways.
I know. I'm just saying that for the chat. If you do LARP, no touching.
So you really shouldn't touch each other, but it was a really intense moment. And so afterwards, like we kind of had the like, okay, we're cool with each other. Hug, okay. Yeah. And go from there. Because you really have to wind down from that. Because you don't want to leave feeling really sour about somebody. Because that was make-believe. You didn't really get in each other's faces and scream, but it certainly feels like you did.
Yeah, it's a concept called bleed, and it's really, really common, especially in role-playing games with a lot of heavy acting. So we'll talk about that in a bit if we still have time. Robin.
Charlie, get off my feet.
Unmute myself. So yeah, going on to what was kind of said before, like with when people bring up something that triggers, for me personally, I'm an open book. So like I generally will always like kind of word vomit what's going on in my head. But I know that some people don't do that. So just being kind of aware that everyone deals with things their own way. Like if someone comes up to me and says something and like, oh yeah, you know, a lot of things I deal with, especially like me being in the alcohol industries, I deal with a lot of people and a lot of people are like, oh, I don't drink. I'm not going to ask you. I don't care why the fuck you don't drink. I'm not going to ask that unless you willingly share that information with me. I know that, you know, some people don't want to share. And that's an example in my life because I'm constantly surrounded by alcohol with my career. So it's just one of those things where I know like it's a very touchy subject with people and everyone has very different experiences. So I know that just being aware that people deal with things differently. Like I'll be upfront and forward with a lot of people, but I know some people want to keep that more close to the heart because it's you know, not everyone wants to share everything. So just being aware that everyone deals with things differently and just being understanding and letting them tell you what they need is kind of just be considerate.
Yeah, just listen. Amy. Oh, you're muted. I want to hear your voice.
No one wants to hear my voice. Kidding.
Yes, they do.
So I was just thinking, there's a lot of, like, sometimes if you want to have an emotionally heavy scene, making sure that people in the scene are ready to have that encounter. Like, a great example would be in our werewolf game, our last werewolf game, me and one of the other characters, like my character and another character, got in a fight. It had been building up for a couple sessions. We knew it was going to happen, but it was sort of a negotiation between the two of us being like, when are we ready to have this? And are we in a position to have this? And then after the fact being like, that was a great scene. Cool, we're good. Like, this was our characters being angry, not us. But also sometimes using those sorts of, like, some catharsis there as well of, like, maybe if you're in a bad mood, you have that interaction, get it out of your system, but being in a consenting space that makes it constructive.
Yeah, I had to break up with Char on camera, and we prepped before that.
Oh, yeah, that was intense.
Oh, that would be hard.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I had like a month that time to prepare myself. It was great. It was a good moment.
Scene,
it
yeah.
worked out well for.
Was that for Vancouver by Night?
Sure.
Yeah, when my character left, Shard's character stayed behind. So we didn't break up in character, but it felt like breaking up because my character's leaving the show forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like prepared and talked about it, and like Shard cried, and because I was prepared for Shard to cry because she's an actress. And she told me she was going to cry. Like, there's been times where she's cried on stream in character, and I've like started freaking out. But she told me she was going to cry. We had the conversation, and we just let the scene roll, and it was very good.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah,
sad, but it was good.
Nice. Amy.
Hi.
And then I'll ask that other question that we had on
Sure.
Blast.
Well, I'm just thinking also in terms of more like in flirting in character. That can be so much fun. It can be a great addition to the game. Having those sort of bringing the themes and like maybe do they, don't they, building up to it. But also again, like working with that to get away from bleed so that you're not transferring that sort of behavior out of the game because this is characters, this is IRL, and you have to be very conscious of that. And sometimes you don't notice, but being open to be like, oh, wait a second, maybe this is bleed, etc. But also the consent of, yes, I'm open to our characters doing this and having this sort of dynamic because some people won't be open to that. And that's fine. That's fine. You got to have that conversation.
Now, since we're talking about mature themes and consent, one of the things that comes up in role-playing a lot, and I think one of the things that gets stigmatized a lot is any type of romantic or sexual narrative at all, because you say it and people go, you're talking about doing it in a LARP or something like that, right? Like they get really mature. You just want to do it because you can't do it in real life, or who even knows what people are thinking. But when you bring consent in, like, sex is a part of life for a lot of people. The number of people on the planet prove that. Okay? And no matter what, sex and romance and friendship and the availability and your reaction to those things is a cornerstone of existence for humans. And whether or not you are straight, you are bi, you are gay, you are asexual, you are pansexual and aromantic potentially. All of these things exist, and having a conversation like that can be really, really important, as well as having a conversation with your DM and the rest of your group, or with your group if you're the DM, on what people want. In my games, there tends to be a lot of flirting and romance options. People, like, I make a very hard effort especially in my fantasy world, to make sure that sex work is a respected trade, because everybody wants it, and if you don't, hey, cool, you save money. And it's like, it's never looked down on. And like, we have lots of people go to the brothel in games, and we have actually some of the best NPCs work at brothels, like Thorn Bear Murder, Goliath Gigolo. God, I love that guy.
Right.
He got his name because he murdered a bear when he was 3. How do you murder a bear?
That was definitely a really good moment.
Does anybody have any ideas on ways to approach that? Because honestly, I have players that are asexual, or who have characters that are asexual, but in reality are poly. And how do you respect that? What do you do? Sure.
I think we talked about this earlier, the whole like lines and veils or fade to black here. That's something that I love. Like, I want romance to be in my stories, but I would get uncomfortable if people started like describing sexual acts that they're doing with an NPC or something. Just fade to black for me. But again, if a whole table is into that, I mean, have a steamy RP session. Go for it.
Yeah. And you just roll for in, roll for out, roll for in, roll for out. Like, you don't need to.
Or the scene in Community when A describes sex. I think the computer Charzon is crashing, but luckily her audio is still coming through. Oh,
she's back.
No. Hello.
Her audio's on this computer, but
so it all worked out.
Well, that was good.
Frozen.
Kelly, you were going to add to that, and then Christine, I think.
I didn't really have too much experience with like romance and stuff until I started streaming for Twitch. Like none of my friends really wanted to like date each other. So we mostly just had characters that didn't. But then when we started doing it for the show, we definitely had, especially in like Vampire the Masquerade, we started broaching that more. And there's definitely been times where we've hit a point where we're like, okay, we all agree that we're going to have sex now, but none of us want to describe what it's like. So what we'll do is we'll just sort of like say how our character goes into it, and then we'll fade to black. That way there's this mysterious understanding of how we all did it. Because we described like how our characters start, I guess. But then in Tabletop Titties, I guessed as a character who's got like a cute, adorable, like 5-year-old flirting relationship with one of the other characters. And we like never take it past just sort of like being really uncomfortable and making like dumb flirty comments with each other.
You held hands once.
We did hold hands once.
Dirty.
But to be fair, I think one of us was scared or didn't have dark vision. I can't remember which one it was.
A likely excuse.
Yeah.
But like all of like we understand like how far we want to take it, and that's like druid crafting a bracelet, and that's about it. Yeah. And I think like just especially I think it was mentioned before, like just communicate with your fellow actors. If you know that a scene's going to come up, or you know that your relationship is going in a certain direction, just talk about like how comfortable you are and how far you're willing to take it or want to take it. And you can do the same with the GM, who's 99% of the other characters.
I have had to seduce so many players over the years in LARPs as well. And oh my God, like you have to draw that line going in. Hey,
actually, that makes me think of something real quick, because we haven't really talked about like the GM's comfortability. Like the GM is a person too, so like if you have a GM who just doesn't want to flirt with you, like don't force them to, I guess. Maybe think of their lines and their veils and their red cards too. Just because they're God doesn't mean they don't have feelings as well.
Yeah. So we have Christine, Caitlin, Amy in that order.
Yeah, so when it comes to like sexuality and flirting and sex and stuff in game, I find like I think the way you do it, Kelly, works great.
Thank you.
Because
wait, me?
Yeah. Well, obviously I only play under you. So because you offer it kind of in the setting. So like an NPC might be a little flirty, but they don't push. They might offer, but they take no as an answer. Mm-hmm. So you as the character have all the control in a very natural situation there of saying, not interested. Like, we have that happen in Rhyme. One of the characters is very clearly stated, no, not interested in any of your weird biological mess sort of thing, right? Like, just no.
That happened to Vistra with an NPC as well. She was having trauma and tried to seduce a halfling, and he was like, I'm not into that kind of stuff. I'm sorry. Yeah. But I just want to jump in with like a 30-second thing real quick. On that note, I always do it that way because it's a pitch and hit thing. I throw it out there, and if they want to go with it, that's fine. If they do not, and I'm just going to put this out here, your group may be different. Most groups will not. And I'm going to drop the R word here. Do not rape. Just don't. Don't do it in a game. If someone specifically asks for it and you specifically would run that in a side scene, that is your business, but do not do it. Do not. We were running a Game of Thrones off stream because no way. The Game of Thrones role-playing game. We had a huge conversation about this, about, wow.
Oh my God, hello, Raid.
This is a part, oh God, you came at the wrong time.
Oh God. Snuggle.
Okay. So that is just my quick interjection there. Just don't do it. Don't do it. When we do this panel at conventions, people go, "Oh, what about that?" No. Don't.
Yeah.
Don't do it in real life. Don't do it in fake life. Just don't do it.
That's okay. No. But yeah, so I really enjoy the way you do it, where you offer it. Essentially, it's there. It can be a part of the game. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to pick it up if you don't want it. You can pick it up as much as you want. We're not going to get too in detail about this sort of thing, but it is where it is. But there was somebody in chat who was saying about how like they were getting a bit feeling really like, on edge and harassed by one of their players constantly trying to be like, oh, our characters are gonna have sex, they would have sex, sort of thing. And it's like, how about no? How about no? Like, I kind of had that happen in actually our LARP. Because everybody was like, oh, your character would totally get with Travis. I'm like, no. I'm not interested. I don't want to play that. I don't care. I'm not interested for my first LARP to get in sexy role-playing when you're standing in front of the person, talking with them, and kind of like, you're supposed to be acting. Like, I don't want to go into any detail in that. So it's like, just hard no. And honestly, if I would almost say if you talk to that person and they keep doing it, it's just, they're doing it to you in real life. That is not a valuable person to have in your game any longer.
They're crossing
They cannot take no
boundaries.
as an answer. They need to hit the curb.
Fake harassment can get real quick. So we gotta hurry through this because we're almost out of time. So Caitlin, Amy, and then Robin, bring us home. And then I have a special announcement that I gotta make at the end of this.
Ooh. Okay. I'll just do this real quick then. I just started playing a new character. I don't usually play really flirty or sexual characters at all, but this character just happens to be quite flirty, and just the way that we introduced the character into the game was the only setup he needed to like have that as basically one of his personality traits. But
And how was that again?
And that was just like he woke up beside this this lady that they were both naked, so they had slept together, and then her angry husband was banging on the door. but the way that they were both presenting it, they were both, you know, consenting and everything. So,
well, the husband wasn't.
Well, the husband wasn't, but the two of them were. But in any case, so that's kind of, I was thinking about it, and that's kind of like, other than him just, you know, flirting with everybody, that was kind of the only actual scene, and there, you didn't even see anything, but it got the point across that this was something that he does or might do. So yeah, you don't really have to even get too into it to kind of bring that point across.
Your brain will make stuff up if you leave out details. It'll be great. It's way more powerful.
Yeah, know when to fade to black and fill in the blanks afterwards.
Yeah, nobody like the lead up is more exciting than the payoff. I promise you. Try to describe a sex scene once, you won't do it again. Amy,
Dex and athletics. Good luck.
Like,
oh my god.
God, I have something horrible I could say, but I'm not gonna.
I think I rolled con save once to see how well I did.
Everybody has had that roll, and everybody's made the penis size roll. Let's be fair.
Oh my god. What was I gonna say?
It was a penis size roll question, right?
No, it was not. It had to do. Oh, yeah. Okay. Here's the thing. If you are going to do the pitch for potentially like going into more mature discussion stuff, or like letting them, they're like, oh, these like the flirting. Don't just pitch it to like the players that you know are over, or like don't make assumptions about what the character's sexuality is going to be based on the player sexuality. Like, just because someone's ace doesn't mean they're not going to play someone who wants to sleep with everybody. Because that can happen.
Right.
I played
Tia gets around.
Tia gets around. I have a character that really was very, very friendly. But that's not me. I'm ace. Like,
Are we talking about Becca?
Yeah.
Yeah, Becca. Becca got around and like...
Yeah.
Whew.
That was a whole thing. But yeah, no, just I talk to the players, see if they're okay with that. Don't make assumptions, please. Because sometimes I want to have fun with that, and sometimes I don't.
That's literally like anything, right?
Yeah.
We basically made it out like Callie had been like the most like sleep with everything everywhere, and then we kind of turned around and was like, yeah, half of those were actually like secret meetups with like other spies
and things like that. And then there was that one time the halfling slept with the Goliath, which, you know, good job, good. Robin.
Yeah, I was kind of going off when you talked about the scene with Vistra.
Yeah.
As a new player, I didn't know, like I was still getting new to this, so I actually like afterwards I messaged Kelly and being like, "Hey, was this okay?" And Kelly was like, "Yeah." are you okay? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, cool, this is good. And it's just like, just have that. If you're ever worried that you crossed the line and maybe didn't mention something, send a message to them after game in private. Don't like bring it out in front of everyone at your table. Message them and ask them, hey, did I cross the line with this? Was this okay? Like, just kind of keep that conversation going, because it's all about consent and communication. And, you know, you don't want to ever be in that position where you're questioning that. So it's just keep the line open.
That's right.
Communication is the key.
That's the summary of the entire panel. If everybody's into something, it's fine.
Yeah.
With like 3 exceptions, but but those are for later. Hey, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for tuning into this. Before we go, I just wanted to thank everybody for showing up and watching, for the raid coming in, for our very special guests who brought so much great stuff to us and are going to bring more great stuff to us in March when we do another WAVA charity event called Streaming for Survivors. Char, do you want to talk about what that does, or what the money goes to?
Sure, yeah. Streaming for Survivors. Anyone in chat, if you host a stream, I want you for Streaming for Survivors. We're trying to raise $10,000 for survivors of sexualized violence. The money will go towards hopefully getting another counselor. Right now, WAVA has over 350 survivors waiting for our counseling services. So we're really trying to band together with the online community. It's our first ever online only event. I'm trying to prove that there's a lot of fundraising potential behind awesome nerdy communities like Dork Tales, like anyone on Twitch. So yeah, Streaming for Survivors. I know Dork Tales is doing an amazing episode on that end of March 26th to 28th.
It's going to be awesome. If you watched the last one, that was that really, really crazy Star Wars stream.
That was so much fun. That was so much fun to do. It was so great.
And I was just a watcher that it was and all women. It was great.
That was wild.
Yeah, I love that it was all women too. It was just like, hey, it's all girls doing this. Like, yeah.
And you guys it was a madhouse. It was great.
That was a hot mess.
It was so good. Actually, Millie, let me talk to you about this after the stream if we have time, because since this is for survivors, I do want to say that I know that, like, as a cis guy, I am aware that guys do have problems and guys do suffer sexualized violence, but not as often, right? So I would feel even better if someone else might run the game instead of me for a change, just because then I'm not the dude with power, right, in the situation that. Although I had no power in Star Wars.
No, you didn't. We didn't let you.
No.
Just like,
we took all the power up from under you with donations.
Yep.
That is fair. That is fair. But we'll talk later about that. Thank you so much for tuning into the Mature panel. I wish this was longer. Next time we do Dork X, it will be longer. And does anybody have any last words before we head out?
I think this is the last panel that I'm in, isn't it?
You're in world building next, aren't you?
Am I in it? Okay, I wasn't sure if I was in it or not. I didn't get the invite. I wasn't sure. So that's exciting. Then great. I'll be in world building. Awesome. Carry on. Don't worry about it.
I was making an immature joke when you said the next one will be longer, so I probably shouldn't talk.
I consent, gal.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for
thanks everyone so much for this.
Yeah. Last words,
really
just
great.
be thoughtful.
Be thoughtful. It's easy. You have a brain. Talk to your players. All right. Anybody else?
Your DM's consent also matters.
Yes.
It's true.
Just be good
Except
to
when
each
you're
other.
playing Star Wars.
Be excellent to each other and
Be
party on,
excellent to
dudes.
each other. That's
I guess be aware that there are
be safe.
Be kind.
Diversify your
there are
tables.
power dynamics inherent into a role-playing game that has a DM, and that is something to be aware of when running games and navigating consent in that space. Know where you sit in that dynamic, because that should influence how you resolve things.
That's true. And we'll talk more about that next time. We'll see you in a few minutes for our world building and storytelling panel. So see you soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.